Hello everyone, so this is my latest buy. It's a 2007 Kawasaki ZX10R. So on the face of it, on first glance, it looks pretty good. Just quickly walk around. It doesn't look that bad really. Can't really see many problems with it. But that is until you dig a little deeper. So the glass screen that covers the speedometer or the rev meter is shattered, so that needs to be replaced. And then we start looking at the fairings. The fairings are not in great nick. Held on with cable ties numerous places. We have a lot of cracks and little bits missing. A lot of cracks. Even if it looks okay, it's held on with cable ties again here. Down here, more cable ties holding it together. More cracks. I don't really know what it's like underneath. I'll have to take it off and look. It's not too bad. Could be worse. It kind of holds it together at least. Rear mudguard, not too bad. Has a few little hairline cracks, but it's in one piece as far as I can tell. This little bolt or nut is not in good condition. What else have we got? Front mudguard, I think it looks in okay condition. It's a bit scruffy. Needs to be cleaned up. Front fairing is, it's not too bad. Then we look here, this side. We're just missing some bolts here. A few little dings on the fairings, but in general they're not too bad on this side. Just things like stickers peeling off and little bits of paint missing. Little hairline fracture there, I think. A little bit of a fracture or break on the fairing here. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to take that off and check it. Then on this side for the rear fairing, it's held on by cable ties again. So that's the state of the fairings. The buddy seat is missing, has a lump chunk taken out of it at the rear. Apart from that, they're kind of complete. So we'll have to see what we can do with the fairings and the buddy seat. They can be repaired. The tank does have a few scratches in the paint, but generally it looks not too bad. I don't see really any damage on it. One of the biggest problems is just the state of condition of a lot of the fasteners and bolts. They're not in good condition. There's a lot of little rusty bits here and little things missing that shouldn't be missing. This is all rusted out and this is quite rusty, but it's all surface rust. It can be fixed up. This bolt for the engine mount, or the rear swing arm mount, sorry, is seen better days. It's obviously been come on and off a few times by somebody who's not being very careful. Engine on the surface of it doesn't look too bad on this side. More rust here on the bolts and things like that. The radiator was replaced, I was told. The downpipes look in pretty good condition. The forks seem in reasonably good condition, but the seals are gone and it's absolutely just, it was pouring out of it there the other day when I got the bike. Brake calipers, a lot of little rusty fasteners again. And we see here, same here, just a few rusty brake disc fasteners. And the other thing, this is not nice. There is a big crack in the Akrapovic exhaust. So this is the carbon fibre. These are not fake, it seems. Carbon fibre. It obviously took a bit of a land or a hit, and it's cracked it here. So it's, when the bike is running, it runs okay, sounds okay. So they're probably quite expensive to replace, so I don't think that's going to be something I can replace. I might see if I can get that repaired, possibly. So then the bigger problems. Well, the biggest problem, I suppose, is just those weeping front forks. They're going to be a little bit of work. And then the other problem, just looking in here, I just spotted it a few minutes ago. There's no cap on the reserve for the coolant, and I also noticed that the just in here, you probably might not be able to see it that well, but there is a chip. You can just see it there, little kind of whitish colour. That is where the mounting bolt for mounting the actual reserve coolant tank goes, and that has a big chip taken out of it. So that's a bit of a problem, but it doesn't ruin the cover, as for the stator cover I presume here. It doesn't ruin it, and I think that can be repaired anyway. Possibly a little bit of JB weld and respray it. It should be fine. What else? We are missing anything here. That looks a bit strange. I'm not sure what's meant to be here, but it looks a bit odd. Maybe it's meant to be like that. This little seat's in good nick, I think. Covers, they're in good nick. Again, the tank on this side, just a few little dings in the paint. Wing mirrors are in good nick, but obviously this bike was down on its side, so it either was dropped while somebody was trying to park it when it was stationary, or it took a little bit of a knock to the side. I don't know how. So there was obviously a little bit of damage done on the left hand side, and that's why the left hand side looks a lot worse than the right hand side. Now the biggest problem here was, I've ridden this bike, just a quick test ride, go up and down through the gears. The gearbox, the engine felt silky smooth, felt really great. I think the bike looks great, it has the potential to look really great. But I left it running for about 5 minutes, and next thing I started seeing coolant pouring out on the left hand side. So there was coolant pouring everywhere. So I'm not sure why there was coolant pouring everywhere. I did ring the previous owner straight away and go, look, why is there coolant pouring everywhere? He said to me that they probably did an engine flush or coolant flush, and they probably replaced it with, left it with water in it. Oh, just pretty idiotic, but these are the things that you kind of have to put up with when you're buying a second-hand bike that's just not being looked after properly. I'm looking at the wiring here. This wiring loom, I'm not sure if that's in the right place. That doesn't look correct to me. I don't know if this radiator that it was replaced with is the correct radiator. I don't know if that radiator fan is turning on. I see a mounting bolt just hanging here, or a mounting point is just hanging here with no nut on it or no bolt on it. That does not look right. So there could be a good bit of work to be done on this. I'm not 100% sure. So I will have to take all the fairings off and go through this bike inside out. Other things that are problems are the levers are not, the grips are not very good. They're all kind of, I can see bits of plastic tearing off, so they need to be replaced. Headstock bearings will probably be replaced as well. There is no power commander in this. It's the stock engine control module, so I'm actually happy about that. I didn't want to see a power commander on this. I don't think it really needs one. Okay, and a few little bolts, fasteners are missing there as well. So this exhaust looks in really good nick. Looks really cool. The back brake light is not working. Indicators are working. The headlight is working. The dims are working. So there is the potential here for having a good bike if I just put the work in and get everything fixed up. So let's get those fairings off and let's just take a look underneath and see what the total damage is. I was hoping that I'd be able to replace the coolant in this today, but when there's no cap on it, I'm not 100% sure. God only knows what I'm going to find underneath here. Okay, so that's the new project bike. I think we're going to get plenty of good videos out of this. See you later. So with the fairings removed, we can get a clearer picture of what it's like underneath. It's not too bad on the right hand side. Now everything kind of looks like it's all in good nick and fairness. There's no damage really that I can see to the engine. Everything kind of looks like it is where it should be. Just these few bits of electrical components, they were just kind of sitting inside the fairing, which they shouldn't really be. This is just this was just disconnected. That's for the just for the signals, turn signals. So everything on this side looks okay. I have to take off the seat jet. Even the little nuts and bolts all look like they're all there on this side. No problems. Pretty happy. Go around the other side though, it's a slightly different issue, or a slightly different story. It's a little bit of a disaster zone here. So here's all the wiring. That was all just sitting inside the fairing. As I said, there was this. That's what was holding the fairings together. The other fairing sits in here. That should not really be the way it is. So all these wiring, it's not in too bad a nick, but here's the turn signal, which I had to take out because they have hardwired it into the wiring harness. That's not the way it should be. Apart from that, the wiring doesn't look too bad here. As far as I can tell, like the bike is, everything's kind of working. Until I get down here, I noticed that there's this wire here, which is connector was loose. I thought it connected in here, but it doesn't. That's already connected into something. And then I noticed that there's wiring down here that's just hanging, and I don't know where that's meant to go. Now, what is that? I can trace it back. It's actually connected in here to the exhaust. So I presume that they are the oxygen sensors. They've obviously deleted purposely the oxygen sensors. I'm not actually sure what effect that has on the performance of the motorcycle. It obviously will have some sort of an effect. So that really looks like the extent of the electrical bodgery that's going on here. Obviously the bike came down on its left hand side, and that's why some of this got a little bit damaged, and they just kind of fixed it back up as best they can and try and get it working. Now the coolant reservoir, it looks like they got a replacement coolant reservoir. It looks like the coolant reservoir absorbed most of the impact along with the fairing, so the engine didn't take too much of a damage except for here on the stator cover. Now there should be a little plastic grommet that fits on here, and then there should be a bolt like this that screws in there. I have tried this. You can actually screw a bolt in here, no bother. I've tried it already. So I just need to get a grommet and a bolt, screw it in, and then I'm going to use some JB weld to, while the bolt is in, I'm just going to put some JB weld on to fix that up, shape it back up and get it looking good. Or I might look to see if I can find a new or a replacement stator cover. There's a little, try to take off this rear fairing or rear mudguard. There's a bolt like this, so this one came off. As you can see, it's quite rusted out. I could get the one on the near side, on the far side, it's stuck in there. So I've soaked it in penetrating fluid. It's kind of rounded off the head, and it's very hard to get to. So I don't know if I'll bother even taking that off for the moment. It's not a big deal, I just wanted to take it off and give it a cleaning and check it out. So that's the extent of the problems, I suppose. The only other thing I noticed is just here, somebody has applied silicone to the around the lights. I'm not entirely sure why. It probably works okay, but it's not ideal. So I'll just check that out. So that's the majority of my problems that I've discovered. I don't think there's really a whole lot else. Maybe I did notice that this obviously took a bit of a whack, just to show you what it should look like. There should be a spacer, and then the fairing fits in here. Okay, so that's the big metal spacer, and this nut screws into that spacer. That was not on it on this side. They had just put in this little screw, and I have a feeling that the threads are damaged on this side. There's a little bit of damage that I can see, so they probably bent that when it came down. It probably bent that bolt. So that's fixable. It's not a huge problem. It's not a big massive chunk taken out of frame or anything. I did notice some kind of like oil that was seeping down here. I did trace it back. It's coming from the chain guard or the chain cover here. So it's coming from the chain. It's just oil from the chain. That's all that is. So yeah, that's all my problems. They're not overly excessive. I think everything here can be fixed, and can kind of get it right, close to 100% at least. Fairings wise, the right fairing is actually in almost perfect condition. Looking around here, that's my right fairing. What was missing was a lot of fasteners, so I can get the fasteners. They're easy to replace. The bottom fairing, it does have a little bit of damage there, and here I think, compared to that side, you can see what damage was done. So there's a little bit of damage. There's a crack on this side. This is the left side, but the rest of it is okay. So that possibly is salvageable. I think we can do something with that. The problem is really on the left hand fairing, side fairing. So here it is. So you can see where it had all the cracks and damage, and they have these little staples. They use it's like a little heat gun that heats the staples, and they staple in. He kind of welds them in, I suppose, or melts them in, and they hold the fairing together. So that would be the solution that I would be kind of considering myself. So they're not too bad. It's done the job of holding it together. Apart from that, there is obviously some bits missing. Some fastener points are missing up the top. I'm not sure if they can be fixed or not, but we will look into that. Down the bottom it's all good. So yeah, I think the biggest problem was that just there was some bad fasteners and missing fasteners. So my next job now is to take off the wheels. I need to take off these wheels. These tyres are almost bald. Yeah, they're completely shot at the front and at the back. So it's just going to be remove this nut, then loosen up this bolt here. 2 bolts, I think, just have to be loosened up, and loosen up some bolts here, 2 bolts there, and then just withdraw that bar. I forget the technical name, there's a better name for that than what I'm saying. And once we remove that, the front wheel comes off, so that should be okay. Then for the rear wheel, let me see where it is. Okay, so the rear wheel is just remove this little pin, remove the nut, the lock nut. I think it's called a castle nut, and it should be just as simple as, I think, withdrawing the axle bolts. Just pull it out from here, so just pull it out from this side, and then I can take my rear wheel off. The brake pads on the rear, they look like they have some meat on them, but I can't really, there's no real wear indicator that I can see, so maybe they are worn. I'll have to just check them once I get that off. So the rear tyre, front tyre, they will both have to be replaced. And then I need to, I have ordered, paid for some fork seals, so I need to remove these forks. So to remove the forks, I need to undo these 2 bolts here, so you can see them there. There's just 2 bolts. Just undo those 2 bolts. There's a bolt here that has to be loosened, and their forks are, well, actually there's the what is that? There's a bolt in here, I think, somewhere. Can't see actually. It's around this other side. Let me see. So there is some bolt just in there. Can't really get it to focus, but it's just there. I think I just have to loosen up that bolt. It's just in there actually, you can see it. Loosen up that bolt for the clip-ons, and then I should be able to just slide the 2 forks. It's the same on this side. 2 more bolts have to be loosened. A bolt here, and again that bolt on the clip-on, and then I should be able to slide everything off. So my forks at the moment are supporting the bike up in the air, as you can see. I will take that off. I'll put this into the shed. I'm actually not in my own house. I'm in somebody else's house, so I'll just put it in the shed. I have another stand that goes into the steering stem in here. So it goes in through here, goes through the steering stem, and then I can support the bike off the air, up in the air, or off the wheels and off the way to the forks, and I can remove all that. So that's the next job. So to get my stand into the headstock, it just goes in there and holds the bike up so I can take the forks off. I have had to take all the front unit off, so this headlight, that was the last thing to come off. I also have to take off this piece here, which sits underneath the headlight, and I had to, what else? Then the front fairing. So the front fairing, which just fits on here, and that's kind of held on with the wing mirrors. So I should now be able to put the bike up on the stand and take the wheel off and the front forks. So I have removed the front forks from my ZX10R. So there you can see the right fork, which has been removed, hasn't been disassembled yet. That's it in all its glory. But what I have done is I have disassembled the left fork. So that's it, broken out by all its parts. So the tools that I needed were a ratchet with I think it's a 24mm socket. I needed a ratchet with a 14mm socket. I needed a 17mm spanner with an open mount, and I just needed a flat screwdriver or something like a pick, but I think a flat screwdriver is the best thing. And then I also needed a straight edge ruler. This is my metal straight edge ruler. I also have a container here which is used for containing the waste oil. Now what you need to do is you need to screw off this cap up at the top. So it's held on with this bolt. Now on top of the cap there is this spring pre-tensioner. Okay, so that has a little bolt on top of it as well. So you can see that there's a bolt here, and then there's basically not a bolt, a nut head I suppose, and a nut here. Okay, so this nut is for the pre-tensioner, so that's for tensioning the spring, adjusting the tension of the spring. So you want to reverse that all out the whole way. So this little kind of green part that's on top, so that is loosened out with the ratchet and the, what was it, the 14mm. Okay, so you just turn that anti-clockwise until it reverses out the whole way, and that's because you need to take the tension off that spring as much as possible, and makes it easier to get at some of the parts that are inside. You then take your ratchet, the 24mm, and as you notice here, I actually have the socket is for, it's a long socket which is usually for removing large spark plugs, But you need a long socket, because the short sockets will not be able to get to the top, get down to this, because of this here, because of this pre-tensioner. So you can see there's a little bit of damage on this cap nut, and that's because guys who've gone at it before have used sockets that were too small. So make sure you have the right socket for doing that, otherwise you're not going to be able to reach it properly and you're probably going to damage it. So you need to hold this tube and then turn this anti-clockwise and loosen up the cap. So once you loosen up the cap, this outer tube should just come loose from the cap, and it should actually just slide down the inner tube. Now once it comes down, you just basically, it should just slide down like so. Now you then need to take your container for the oil, and you need to just turn it upside down, and out comes the oil. So pour out all the oil. You need to do it a few times, turn it up so the right way, turn it back up. You can't do that enough, because there's always oil coming, free oil somewhere hidden in there to come pouring out, and it just leaves a massive mess. As you can see, there's still some oil coming out all over my tabletop. The cardboard's covered in oil stains, even though I've already poured the oil out of this tube. So once you get your all your oil, waste oil out, in this one it's sort of a greeny colour, dirty green, you then need, with this outer tube slid down to the bottom, you need to get at this little securing nut. This is it here, okay, and you need to get at it with this spanner, which is the 17mm spanner. So you just connect onto this nut, hold onto the nut with this spanner, and on the end of this is the fork cap. So this is the fork cap, which sits up the top. It has a little oil seal up it. Okay, little oil seal there. But that screws onto the end of this piston, which is on the inside of the fork tube. Now the problem with getting at this little nut is that it is covered, sits usually inside this little spacer, and the spacer sits on top of this spring, which is under enormous tension. So the spring inside this black tube, or the inner tube, with the spacer and the fork cap are under tremendous tension, and you will move it by hand, but not by very much. Ideally what you need is a tool called a fork tube compressor. So you can buy them on eBay. They are usually a couple of €100, dollars. They're not cheap. They probably cost as much to buy the tool as to actually pay a trained mechanic to do the job. So you need to consider that, whether you're actually going to do this job or not yourself. I didn't want to spend that money on a specialist tool, so what I have done is I have built my own tool, which you can see here. So basically it's just a wooden block at the very bottom, and I have secured into it 2 metal poles, and then at the top of the 2 poles there's 2 screwdrivers. Not screwdrivers, but I've sawn the ends off them and filed them down so they're nice and smooth. But they're 8mm, these in thickness, so they're quite thick screwdrivers. They have there's no head on them. You can see here there's just flat metal. Okay, and basically they can be move in or out. I've drilled some holes in the metal tubing, so they, as you can see, that's how they go through the metal tubing, like so. And what I do is I put my fork in the middle of that, and I compress the spring down, and you can see there's 2 little holes which I can clamp the screwdrivers into. So you need to pull this tubing down, or compress that spring as far as you can, until you can get no further, until you can basically, these 2 little holes, they should be really just at the top of this tube, or the fork, okay? And you then use the 2 screwdrivers to clamp into these 2 little holes, and they basically hold the spring under tension, and that allows me to get at it just about, basically it just comes down to about here, and I can just about get at that lock nut or securing nut with my spanner. Now once I can just get a spanner on that, I can then take my 24mm socket and break the cap, which is screwed on here. So it's screwed on there. I need to break that off. It's screwed on to a certain torque. I think it's something around 15 Newton meters. So it's not that tight, but it's tight enough that you basically can't get it, open it, unless you get that spanner in. And this is a tough job to do, but I managed to do it using that tool that I created. And once I get the cap loosened, I can screw it off completely, and then I can remove the spacer, which is just this little plastic. It's a very hard plastic. To remove that spacer, which has a little cap on the end of it, metal cap, and then I can remove the spring, and I can get at this little piston which slides up and down. Okay, and once I get all those bits removed, I was then able to get at the inner fork tube, or sorry, the outer fork tube, and I was able to just basically slide it off the inner fork tube. Now once I get the outer fork tube off, I was able to get at the dust seal, which is here, and the oil seal, so I could just use a little flathead screwdriver to remove those seals. So there's my dust seal, here's my inner oil seal. The inner oil seal, between the dust seal and the inner oil seal, is this little spring clip which can be removed again with a little flathead screwdriver. You need to do a few checks. Check the condition of your fork tubes. There's a little bit of pitting on this which I need to sand out. I use a straight edge ruler to check for any bends in my forks. You might not always be able to see any bends in your forks just looking at it visually. Your fork might look okay, but when you stick a straight edge to it and rotate that fork tube while holding the straight edge in place, you might notice that the gap develops and increases and decreases, and that would indicate that you have a bend in your fork. So there are some of the things you have to check. You also have to check the length of your fork spring, which I have done. That should be within a certain spec. If it's not, you need to replace the spring. If this is too badly pitted, you need to replace this. If the fork tube is bent, you need to replace it as well. So that's basically it. That's how you disassemble the forks. I can now put on my new fork seals. What I'm waiting for here is a fork seal driver to do that job, but I'll get the fork seals replaced. They just slot on here, and then I just go the opposite direction, or the opposite of what I've done to deconstruct my fork tubes or my front forks. I need to reconstruct them, and once I get this back on top of this with the oil and dust seal, I can then use my seal driver to just drive them in and continue on then to rebuild my forks, and then I should be good to go to get them back onto the motorcycle, and I won't have any oil leaking. I will have to replace this oil. Whenever you replace your seals, you will have to replace the oil. So let me see, what is it? It's something like this. This is like Moto fork oil. So this is not the actual, what is this for my VFR? But there's a special oil that you get. It's a sort of a hydraulic oil, I suppose, which you then have to fill back up. There's a certain measurements of oil that you're meant to fill into these. It has to be very precise. You then have to go through some measurements to make sure it's not too high or too low inside of the fork tube, that you filled it up to the right level, and then you can just put the cap back on and put the forks back onto your motorcycle, and you're good to go. So Then the other thing is I have got my one new tyre for the front. I have a Bridgestone Batlax BT0106, so that's my brand new tyre on the front wheel. I am waiting for the tyre. They didn't have them in stock, but they should have it this week, and I will then have a front tyre on I will have a back tyre on the back wheel as well. So I will be then, once I get my forks reinstalled and the front and rear wheel, I should be in a position where I can actually at least take the bike for a bit of a test ride, but there is other things that I need to do. So that's it for now. Okay, so after my last video a few days ago, I received my new fork seal driver. So that's it here. Basically this just fits around the tube of the fork. Can't really do it. Okay, fits in like that, and it sits against the seals, which have to be seated on the outer tube of the fork, and this little part here is used for just smashing down on it, and it basically drives in the fork seals. So the fork seals have been installed, and I have rebuilt the entire fork. I have filled it with fluid. Let me get it here. So I've used this. So it's Elf branded fork oil 10W. That was what was recommended to me by my local motorcycle shop. So I sanded down some of the pitting that was on the bottom of the fork. Now you can see how far it is away from the seals, so there is a little bit of travel before the seals actually hit the pitting. But this fork, which has been rebuilt, is not under load when the bike is on it. There's going to be a good bit of weight, so it's going to push it down a little bit, and it's going to be a lot closer to that pitting, and when you hit a big bump in the road, or that is going to come down over it. So it is nice and smooth. I sanded it down. It's not perfect. You'll never get it perfect when there's pitting. You don't want to over sand it either. So you can see, basically I can run my finger across it here and I don't feel the pitting. That's the main aim of it. I can't feel it at all. If I was blindfolded, I wouldn't be able to tell you where the pitting was, but I can actually see it visually. It won't be perfect. It will wear the fork seals a little bit quicker than if there was no pitting there at all, obviously, but it's just something you kind of have to manage and you have to live with. After I rebuilt this fork, I took a look at this second fork. Now this second fork, it's actually nice and dry, so it actually doesn't seem to be leaking fork oil. This one was leaking a lot of fork oil before I rebuilt it and replaced the fork seals. This one was not. It actually has no pitting on it, this particular fork tube. Well, not that I can actually see, so there's no pitting. So for that reason, this one, the fork seals are in good condition, and for the moment I didn't feel I needed to replace them. Now what I did discover was that as I looked at it visually, it looked a little bit crooked, this fork tube. So I don't know if I can put it up as a kind of a comparison. So looking at the fork tubes, you can see it visually if you kind of just follow it with your eye. This fork tube on the right has a bend in it, so it's bent this way. It's bent this way basically. It's quite subtle, but I can see it. I didn't want to believe it, so I did a test. I put the fork tube down flat. Now this outer tubing can be rotated even though it's still attached to the fork, so there's no problem with rotating this. So when I did rotate it, okay, it actually rotates freely enough once it's off the motorcycle. When I did rotate it, I could see a sort of I put up my kind of straight edge ruler on top of it, and I rotated it around, and I could see that the gap, obviously these fork tubes are a little bit thicker at one end, so they're thicker in the middle than they are at this end. So there's a little bit of a gap. When you put your straight edge ruler on it, there's a little bit of a gap. Okay, and when I rotate this outer fork tube with straight edge on top of it, I could see that gap decreasing and increasing, decreasing and increasing as I rotate the fork tube. And it was doing that because it is bent. So, I'm sure there's guys on YouTube who have some sort of fancy techniques for straightening fork tubes. You could possibly heat it, apply a lot of heat to it, disassemble it, apply heat to it, try and re-bend it back into shape. That would kind of do. That depends on whether the actual fork, the inner fork tube, is bent or not. I don't know if the inner fork tube is bent or not. I didn't want to really experiment with that method. I didn't want to have to see if this was bent or not. I found some fork tubes for about just over €200 in Germany, replacement fork tubes, so I have actually gone ahead and bought them. I bought them because it's very hard to find these fork tubes, even on eBay, and I've just searched other sites. The only parts I could find were the inner pistons. The inner pistons of these fork tubes was the only thing I could find on some of the websites that usually have fork tubes available. There was some other ones available on eBay, but they were all either damaged or bent themselves. So once I saw some for two of them, it's a pair, they look like they're perfectly straight, for €200 in Germany, I just bought them straight away, and I will hopefully they will come in the next couple of days, and I will basically replace this fork tube. This will not be going back into the motorcycle. It's not worth the hassle, and it would be just, I could put it back into the bike. It's actually, the fork is like, it's working fine. The biggest problem with bent fork tubes is that the fork tube, inner fork tube, will not go up and down the outer one because it's bent. But this one is actually going up and down perfectly fine. I couldn't find any evidence of sort of binding, where the tubes are basically getting caught in each other and they're not moving up and down freely. They are moving up and down freely, but that would cause the front of the motorcycle, the wheel, to be a little bit out of alignment. Your bike will not be properly aligned if your fork tube is bent. So I just have to go ahead, spend the money and replace it. So that is all my fork woes hopefully sorted. When I get the second, the replacement fork for this one, I will probably just disassemble it. I'll check the status of the actual seals on the new fork tube that's going to replace that one. I'll probably replace them. Okay. But I have my spare fork seals, new fork seals there, the oil seal and the dust seal. So I didn't install it on that one because it would just be a waste given that it's bent. So that's it until the next video. See you later. So I have two new tires. one on the front. They are Bridgestone tyres. This is the front one. This is the rear one. I have drained the coolant. Coolant is drained by a little bolt. Here we have our water pump. There's a little bolt just there. So I've removed that bolt and drained the coolant. There's also a little bolt. Let me see, can you see it just in here? It's at the front of the engine. That had to be replaced, or that had to be removed. Drain out the coolant. The other thing I did was I disconnected the radiator fan and just plugged it up to my battery just to test that it actually worked. So it does work. I do want to replace this radiator with OEM radiator. The OEM radiator is actually slightly bigger, so I'm not going to do it today. What I want to do is I just want to put in fresh coolant. I didn't know whether it was water in the bike. That's what the previous owner told me, but he wasn't actually correct, I don't think. So it's a sort of a greeny colour, so it does look like there was fresh coolant put into it. I discovered that these two pipes here were connected up incorrectly. So this one leads into the thermostat, and this one leads into the reserve coolant tank. Now we had them switched the wrong way, so I have switched them the right way. I followed it per the actual diagram on the service manual, which says that the pipe from the radiator at the top, that's connected into the coolant, and that would make sense because there's a little cap in here, or a little valve that opens and closes depending on the pressure. So that could do damage possibly if they were routed incorrectly, and that's possibly why I was noticing coolant pouring out everywhere. This pipe here I think feeds into the oil pump. I have on the other side of the oil pump, this is the oil pump here, I think that's what it is, the oil pump, but on the other side of it, you can just about see it, there is a oil filter. So I've replaced the oil filter. That's why you see oil just dripping down there. So the oil filter was replaced. I have fresh oil here. This is the oil I'm going to put into it. I think it takes about 3 litres, something like that, of oil. Here's the oil drained out. The sump plug is down the bottom, down here. So that is back in. So I think I'm ready now to fill it back up with coolant and to fill it back up with oil. So the coolant should be filled back in through this little cap, and the oil should just go in through here. So oil capacity, this is in here. Filter removed, 3.7 litres. So I think I'll bring it for a test ride once I get the oil and the coolant into it. The other thing I noticed was I took this coolant reserve tank off just to look behind it, and I actually noticed there's actually an engine mounting bolt, or a frame mounting bolt. It connects two parts of the frame. This is the main frame, and this is the subframe. It's connected up to the engine. It's connected into the engine, it's connected up to the frame here, and it's connected up to the frame just behind this. So that bolt was actually missing. So I put a bolt in. I actually had a spare bolt. So that's most of my most of the work that I'm going to do on it for now is the time to just put the oil back into it, put the coolant back in, and just get the bike out on the road, check that everything is running as it should. What else? This little point here, now this is only for putting a little bolt that secures the fairings, but I think that was obviously damaged a little, and I think they filled it in, they welded it in a little, or maybe it was just damaged, I'm not sure. But the fairing mounting bolts, which is this basically one, it's the exact same as this one here. I've taken this off and tried to fit it on the other side, because per the service manual or the parts manual, this bolt should be exactly the same as the one on the other side. This does not, when I take it off, it does not screw in on the other side, so this is obviously damaged. The tread hole is damaged on this side, so that's going to have to be possibly drilled and tapped, retreaded basically, and then I can put in a new bolt. I have a number of components taken off the bike now. So this is the front headlights. There's a little bit of damage to this. I can actually see here, this is a mounting point for the front fairing. So that is actually part of the front fairing. So that screw needs to be taken off, and I need to take that off, and I need to reattach that to the front fairing, which is down there on the ground. Apart from that, the front fairing is actually in good condition, so it shouldn't need any more work than just reattaching that. This shouldn't be too big of a job. I might try something like this metal repair kit. I don't know if this is exactly what I'll use, but I'll do a little bit more research. But it'll be something, it doesn't need to be too strong, but it just needs to be enough that it can secure the fairing, or this little piece, so it actually just snapped off and it fits back in perfectly. There's also mounting points at the top of the headlights, but it's missing here. They've obviously tried to repair it previously, because there's this black silicone all over it, which is obviously didn't work, because black silicone is really not suitable for this kind of, is one of the main securing points or mounting points for the headlights, so it's just not good enough. So I will have to do some plastic welding to repair that. It needs a really strong bond here, but it should be fixable. They've already, this obviously in the past had kind of snapped or broken, and they actually repaired it. Now they did a good job on it. You can see this piece of plastic, big square piece of plastic in the middle, and you can see some, so it looks like plastic welding at the top in the middle section. So that was obviously cracked before, but that doesn't need any more work. This is the bulb holder. These are the LED bulbs, I think, that they installed. These are aftermarket Chinese crap, and I know they're crap because they nearly went on fire when I tried to drive the bike home. I just took it out for a quick test drive just to see was everything working okay. Next thing I saw some flames coming from here. I could actually see this while in the rider position. You can actually see the back of the bulbs, and I could see there was a little bit of flame coming from this, and it was because it was just bad wiring. It wasn't connected properly. The wire was slightly broken. So here's the end of the wire. So why did that go up in flames? Well, that's because it's connected to this whole wiring was all connected into the wiring harness, and as you can see it's some sort of a transformer, I think, because the lighting system on this bike is 12 volt, but this is 23,000 volts. So this crap is taken off the bike, and it won't be going back in the bike. I'll be buying new bulbs that'll go in here, the OEM 12 volt bulbs, and I'll connect it up back the way it was stock. This one is stuck in with silicone, so I'm not sure why. I presume that the bulb holder is actually metal, so I doubt that that is damaged on the right hand side. What I suspect is that the actual bulb itself is made of plastic and that this is slightly damaged, and they couldn't get it to stay in, so they siliconed it in. So it's secured with silicone, so I need to take off all the silicone, take that out, and there'll be OEM bulb going back in here and in here. So this is this is for the left side, and this is part of the right side. So this is all off aftermarket, and it's all Chinese crap, and it's all going in the bin. The other thing I have here is I've taken off the speedometer, odometer, I don't know, tachometer, I don't know what you call them. But that's it. I need to take off this little cover, this front cover. There is, you can see the little screws, I've already loosened them. There's actually 6 screws that come off. You actually have, this is attached to a bracket, I think it's this bracket here, which I've also taken off. Front bracket. This mounts the lights, the tachometer, and the fairing. So you can see there's quite a bit of corrosion on the paint, so I'm going to I've taken that off, and I'm going to, job for today is to just clean that up and repaint it, because you can't see it when you're sitting in the rider position, so I want that looking black again. This is the mounting bracket on the left side. So this is the part, there's a part here broken. It could be repainted, cleaned up, repainted. But when the bike was let drop, or when it was in a crash or whatever happened to it, the little mounting point for the fairing actually snapped off here. So that's about €15 to replace, so I'll get a new one of those. And the seat, I will fix that with a little bit of black silicone. I have some things like little bits here, like the bleed valves on the brakes. They're just little rubber covers or caps. I actually have some bleed valves for the brakes, which I will replace as well. Some of them are rusty. What else have we got here? That's all my fairings. There will be some work on the fairings, but I'll do that in a separate video. And here is the left indicator. So this left indicator was basically attached on. It was attached to the actual, into the wiring harness, which it shouldn't be. It should be detachable. So I've taken that off. I basically just cut it off, and I have attached this little aftermarket connector, so I can just connect it in and out of the wiring loom the way it should be. So the other end of this is connected into the wiring loom, and I'll just wrap this up so that the wires are not bare. There'll be a little bit more protection. This is my regulator rectifier. This looks like it's a second-hand one because it's got the markings for ZX10R. I think it says 04, so they probably use the same 04, 05, 06, 07 model, use the same regulator rectifier, or at least it seems to work. So probably when the bike came down on its left hand side, this is connected into this. It's held on in this little bracket, and this bracket obviously took quite a bit of a bang, bit of damage on the left hand side, and the regulator rectifier probably got damaged, so they got a second hand one. I know it's second hand because the fact that it has writing on it. This is something you'd see on second hand stuff. Okay, so I've drawn up the parts list for all the parts that I need to replace, or all the parts that were missing, and I have actually received them all now, so I'm kind of good to go. So we'll just go through the parts that I have ordered and received. First off, we have a load of little bolts we have 3 bolts for mounting the radiator fan to the radiator. These are OEM ones, so therein we have these 2 little bolts. I think they're to do with mounting a little bracket, which, here it is. So this is the bracket it's the radiator stay, it's called, and it basically mounts the radiator at the bottom to the engine, and then these little bolts are basically part of it. So there's 2 bolts. We then have this. Little frame here, still a mounting bracket, I suppose. So this is the replacement mounting bracket, the one that was broken. So which part was it that was broken? I think it was, I don't know which way this goes, but I don't know which way it goes, but I think it goes this way. One way or the other. But one of these mounting points here, this one or this one, I think it was this one, was broken on the motorcycle, and this is a mounting point for the fairing. So it was quite important, and I could have got it welded up, but it'd probably be as much cost and effort as buying a new one. For a new one, it's I think it was 15 or 18 euros, so it's not too bad. So it was just worth getting a brand new one, and it looks a lot better as well. It's not all rusted out. We then have a number of other little bolts. I don't even remember what they're for. They're probably for mounting the I think this one could be for mounting the coolant reserve. So I think this little rubber grommet or damper, that's part of the that's missing from the coolant reserve as well. So those little bits. This is the frame or subframe mounting bolt that was missing from behind the actual reserve coolant tank. And then we have these little bolts here. They're actually for the left hand side for mounting the it's a big massive bolt that essentially was when the bike was dropped, it was obviously broken or missing or lost, and this is basically just a spacer bolt, and then this little bolt goes into it to mount the fairing. So I've actually bought these. They were probably a couple of euro. I actually didn't really need them in the end, because actually these are surplus actually, so I'll just put them to the side for the moment, but they're only a couple of euro. Another thing, this is the coolant reserve cap, so it's an OEM. All these parts are OEM, so everything's going to be perfect. Here we have an OEM brake switch. Again, this is a piece that cost, I think, something like 35 euro, so they're expensive enough, these little switches, but that's an OEM switch and couldn't really skip on that. Other bits that I have bought here, I have splashed out on a brand new throttle cable. So I don't know if I'll mount that straight away. I think I'll just buy it and keep it, just in case the other one ever breaks. The reason being that this bike is 2007. In 5 years time, after 20 years, I don't know how easy or hard it's going to be to get a brand new throttle cable, so at least I have that available. I also have a new clutch cable, both the clutch cable and the throttle cable, but more so the clutch cable on the motorcycle are pretty beat up. There's a lot of cracks in the rubber, and that's not good. And inside there's a sort of a Teflon coating, and that sort of wears over time, so they do need to be replaced eventually. They can't last forever. We have a number of things to do with the lights. So the front headlights, this is the front headlight. This is the main beam, so you can see it's a little connector. So I haven't connected it in yet, because I have all the headlights and all that off the bike. So that's the main headlight. I then have this is the dim in the headlight, so it looks very similar, but it's a lower wattage. Again, it just clips in, and that's again OEM. Let's put it back in properly so it's protected. And we have here just a little small bulb that I think it's the daytime running light or something like that. It's a little 5-watt bulb, so that needs to be replaced on one side. I forget on which one, but I'll figure it out later. So they're all the little small parts. This was the most expensive part. I think the clutch cable was €20. The throttle cable was €35, something like that. This was the piece that cost €100. So this is this is it replaced. This is the old dash screen. So you can see it's just full of cracks, and there was cracks in the plastic as well, and it looked pretty beat up. It didn't look good, and one of the nicest features of these bikes is actually their dash. So I've actually replaced it already. So let me just take it out and show it to you. Because it's just nice to see the difference. So that's my new dash with the cover replaced. As you can see, it looks pretty nice. And then here's the old one, the beat up one. So quite a difference. It's going to look it's really going to make the bike look a lot better. So that's all the bits. I think all these bits here cost something like €330 with delivery. So, you know, the most expensive is really just on this little cover for the dash. That was over €100, I think. And then the clutch cables, they're like over €50. Each of these bulbs, I think this one was €35, €30. So those little bits kind of added up to make quite a hefty bill of €330 or something like that. But all the little bolts and things like that, and the little mounting bracket for the regulator rectifier was actually cheap enough. So we can move them out of the way. So then the next thing that I got second hand, so they were all brand new. This is a second hand piece that I found on eBay. I found this in France. This is a left side fairing, and it's quite dirty. There's quite a lot of dust and kind of paper dust basically from the packaging. But apart from that, this cover or fairing is absolutely perfect. So once I get that cleaned up, it's going to be really nice. So I was going to repair, and I probably will repair, the original fairing that came with the bike, but you're never going to get it 100% right. You're going to be able to fix it and get it looking, on the surface it looks okay, but it's never going to be 100% right, and it's quite a bit of effort to fix these fairings. If any of these parts, so the parts that was broken off were just up here. So it was all this part here was broken off, and to fix that and get it right is not an easy task, and you don't really have a template to go by. So what I decided to do was just look for a perfect fairing. There is a lot of these fairings second hand for sale, but they are not in good condition generally. They always have some sort of break, some sort of scratching, some damage of some description, and they're always overpriced as well. This one I got from France for €70, 70 something euro, €2 or €3, and it comes with a lot of the little mounting points, the little rubbers, which are quite important. There's no damage on it at all. It's perfect. It also comes with this little, so this was what I was saying is the extra, turn it around so you can see it properly. This little mounting bolt here, and then you can see the spacer. So this is the spacer that I have ordered separately, but now I have one too many. But not to worry, this nut is actually in perfect condition, and the one that's on the bike already, on the right hand side is all rusted out, so I will replace that rusted out one with this one. So it's all good. So that's the fairing. Next up are front forks. So again, front forks were a problem on the bike. I thought that I knew that the seals were gone on them, so that wasn't such a big problem. But what I discovered was that one of the right fork on the bike was bent, and it was bent probably beyond repair. I don't think I'd attempt to try and get it fixed or re-bend it into shape. I think it's too far gone. So what I've found is second-hand front forks in Germany. I think I paid about €200 for these front forks, second-hand. They're not bent, they're not leaking oil, they're not in perfect condition. The along here, the surface it should be jet black. It's a little bit worn, but it's not scratched. It's not like, it's just kind of a surface. I think it's kind of like the surface colouring is just kind of, I suppose, wore off it. But this was a bike that had 17,000 kilometers apparently, so the forks are in good condition. I have a right and a left, so basically I got these for €200. It's a good value. To get one of these that's not bent on eBay was nearly impossible. I could see that every single one of them that were advertised for, at least bent forks, were being advertised for €100. The internals of a fork were being advertised for over €100. To buy these brand new, each of these forks would be over €1,000. That's on the cheapest website that I can find. The brand new OEM forks are over €1,000 each, so that'd be €2,000. So I got them for €200, so that's pretty good value. I can replace the right hand fork, I can keep the left, or I can put them back up on eBay, and I can probably sell a good left hand fork, which is kind of there for spare. I can sell that probably for the same price that I bought the two of these for. So that's the front forks. I'm pretty happy with that. So next up we have a second-hand radiator. Again, I found this is off the same bike that the forks came off. It's from the same seller. So this is off a bike that had about 17,000 kilometers, which is very little. It's in good nick. It is second-hand. It does show some signs of wear, but there is no problems with it. Everything's good. It comes with some of the little mounting point rubbers, so they're the dampeners. Has some of the nuts or bolts that I bought. They fit into these little, or they screw in here. So they came with the bike, or came with the radiator. So I'm happy with that. This is the OEM radiator. This is off the same bike. So I got this for, I think, €15. Maybe I paid €30. I forget, something like that anyway. So basically this, it goes on here like so, right, and then I just have to use my bolts to screw it on. I've tested this, it all works. I paid €130 for this radiator. Again, the radiator that's on the bike is a Chinese rip-off replica. It's not the exact same size. This is actually slightly bigger, this OEM radiator, than the Chinese one. And the Chinese one, if you remember, I don't think it has the right mounting points for the fan, or at least the fan is not mounted properly on the bike that that I bought. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm gonna have to take off the radiator to check the valve clearances anyway, so I will replace the radiator, I hope. That's the radiator. And then just lastly, there obviously was a lot of damage to the wiring loom on the bike. Now I have fixed up a lot of that damage. But I searched around on eBay, kept an eye out for a second-hand whirring loom. So this is what I found on eBay. This is a second-hand whirring loom. It's in used condition, but everything is pretty good on it. I don't know if everything is perfect, but it's in good condition as far as I'm aware. And if I ever need to replace the OEM wiring loom that's on the bike, I have an OEM replacement. So that's good. I got this for £25 in the UK, so that was pretty cheap. I think he advertised for €50. I've seen some of them advertised for €100 plus. So for £25, I just put a bid in and just asked him would he take £25, and he obviously wanted to get rid of it. So there I have a wiring loom for £25. It would have been stupid not to buy it, given the condition of the wiring loom on the bike, and I have it for the future. So that's really most of the parts that I need. I'm now in a position to start working on the bike. I could start throwing all this back onto the bike, all these spare parts that I've bought, but I have a few other jobs that I possibly need to consider doing. I need to think about whether I'm going to do the valve clearances on the bike. It's a little bit of effort to do that, so while I have the bike slightly apart, I may as well just go and do it. So, see you later everyone, bye now. So what I've done here is I've rebuilt the front end of the motorcycle. So the black bracket there, black metal bracket, it's held on with 3 bolts that's screwed back on, and I've put on the front fairing along with the headlight. So the reason I've rebuilt this is because I have fixed the headlight, as you can see. So you can see that little, the headlight at the top of it, there's a little bit of white plastic. So I've used a little bit of hard plastic and plastic welded that onto the headlight. So it looks a little bit rough at the moment, but I will repaint that black and you won't see it. But you can see that the little screw goes through that holds the headlight into the front fairing. Okay, so it was important to rebuild it just to make sure that everything fitted back together. So what I will do is I will take this apart again. I'll take off that front fairing, take off the bracket, I'll take off the headlight, and I will paint that headlight so that you don't see that sort of ugly plastic welding. But it worked out pretty well. It holds the headlight, it all fits in place. As you can see, I've also kind of cleaned the bike up a little, and I've sprayed it with metal protectant, some corrosion inhibitor, and it also kind of cleans it. So here's the headlight taken off the bike, and as you can see, I have on the right hand side I have painted that little holding point, so where the screws go in. So that's where it kind of screws into the front fairing. So you can see that's the plastic welded piece, and from a distance you can't really see a difference. It's only when you kind of go close up you can see that there's a little different shade of black, but it's very hard to see when it's put on the bike. So that's kind of fixed up, and it meant I didn't have to buy a new headlight. So to remove the fuel tank, you undo the 2 bolts that are securing it on the front. You then leverage it up. I'm supporting it with just a little board of wood. You need to disconnect, so this little wire that connects into the underneath the fuel tank, that's connected into the wiring loom, so you need to disconnect that. Previously I had disconnected the negative terminal of the battery from its lead, so that's free. And then around here, there's this little pipe that leads the fuel from the tank to the rest of the bike. There's a little clip, so it's this little clip here. Okay, so this little clip, you will see it, and it's kind of clipped in like that. And what you have to do is you have to take a flathead screwdriver and you have to stick it in between the clip and the fuel line, and you have to twist like so, and it actually pulls the little clip off. And you can see that there's a little space just where my thumb is. There's a little space where the little flat-headed screwdriver fits in, and that's how you twist it, and it just kind of twists out or comes off. So now that that's disconnected, I should be able to just pull that fuel line off. I have a cloth underneath to collect any fuel, and then it's just a matter of undoing this bolt, which is here. So that's the little bolt. Undo that bolt, and then my fuel tank should come off. So that's the fuel tank removed. I can now undo these bolts or screws and then remove the cover from the airbox. And underneath the airbox, inside it, there should be some more screws that can be undone, and I can then remove the airbox. Now I also have to remove this little sensor here, which is a air pressure sensor, I think. And you can see here, this is the little fuel lead, so I'll just leave that there in case there's any leakage. So that's the air pressure sensor removed. I just pulled it out there. I need to just remove this air filter. Okay, it's actually quite clean. So now I need to undo, I think there should be, okay, one of the bolts is missing just in there, but I need to remove one, two, three, 4 bolts, and then I need to twist this whole airbox counterclockwise to remove it from the air intakes, which are here. And there is 2 pipes. One is actually disconnected already, it seems, and I need to disconnect this one, and then I just twist it off, and that's the housing off. So I have to take off these little air intake scoops. I've already removed one, fits into the frame. So that just comes out, this little rubber fits into the air filter housing. So then I have to remove this little switch here. So to remove that switch, there's a little connector which is white that has to be removed. And there is 3 hoses, so there's one hose here that has to be removed. So that has to be removed, and then there's a hose, a little short hose there, and then there's a little another little short hose underneath it, just behind the plug coil. And once I get that removed, I then need to remove the spark plug coils. They're stick coils, so they just pull them straight out. Just 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I need to pull back this little rubber cover, and I should have access to the to the valve cover, and this little switch, I forget now what it's called, some air suction switch or something like that, that has to be removed, pulled out of the way. So that's why you have to disconnect those 3 hoses. Okay, so we have the stick coils are all removed. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have the pipe removed, I have it stuffed. I have removed the air switch, which is goes on there, and I have removed the this piece from the wiring loom, this piece, which connects to the stick coils, and that bit sticks out and connects into the wiring loom just there. So it's all put away safely. So now I need to look at the cover, this little plastic cover. I do have some wires, so this one is connected to some sort of sensor down there. So I just have to be careful I don't damage that wire. So I can pull that little. Okay, so that's it. You can just see it in there. That just went down. That just went down there. So I can just pull that out of the way, so it's not catching or nothing. And now I have this little plastic cover which can be pulled back. So I don't want to damage it. So I'll just see where is it connected into something there. So I can just pull it back. It's connected into something here. Not sure what, but I should be able to pull this back anyway, and then I can get at my valve cover. So I drain the coolant, open up that bolt, it's all drained out. I've disconnected this pipe from the radiator. I'm going to replace it with this one. And disconnected 2 pipes here and here. The main pipe, and then the pipe connecting to the oil cooler. So now I just need to undo that bolt, and I can remove the radiator. That's the radiator off. You can see this is not an OEM radiator, and it wasn't even mounted properly. There was no bolt here, not in here, and you can see the job, improvised job to hold the fan in place. That's not an OEM fan either, so that will all be replaced. And now I can get at the valve cover and adjust the valve clearances. So I've removed the 6 small bolts from the valve cover, and I now can just, you can see it, I can lift it up, so I'll just take that out. So with the valve cover off, you can see the camshaft here. There's one here and there's one here. It's held in place with these little holders. There's 4 of them, and then there is a holder, smaller holders here at the front, which are holding the cam sprocket, and this is the chain that's driving the cams. So the cams are acting on the valves, which are kind of, you can't really see them, they're buried underneath. But what I've done is I've used a feeler gauge, this is a feeler gauge. This is a, what is it, 0.1 millimeter feeler gauge, and you can kind of stick it in underneath the cam lobes. So here's one that's sticking up in the air. So this is this one up here. It's just sticking up in the air. You can't do them all at the same time. You actually have to turn the engine over to get at certain ones, but you stick it in the feeler gauge and it should, don't know if you can see that, but the feeler gauge should fit underneath the cam lobe, and then you're able to get your measurements. So here is my measurements. I have my intake cams here, the bottom row, and in the top are my exhaust cam lobes, which I was measuring the valve clearance between the lobe and the valve, or the valve lifter I think it's called, so, or the valve cap. So the tolerances for the exhaust are 0.17 to 0.22 millimeters. So this one is out. This one's the worst of them, 0.13 millimeters when it should be not less than 0.17. I have 0.17, I have 0.15, I have 0.16, so they're just barely out of spec. This one is in spec, so 0.22 is the maximum, and this is 0.2, 0.22, 0.18 to 0.2, and then this one here, this is somewhat, I'm not sure if this is in spec or out of spec, so I'll have to just measure them a little bit closer before I remove the camshaft. And then this one here, it's the intake tolerances are 0.15 is the minimum, and the maximum is 0.24. So anywhere in these, it should be anywhere in this range. So it's 0.17, it's in range, within range. They're all, is this one? Yeah, that's in range. This one is within range. This one's within range. So this one is barely out of range. So I'll just remeasure that one just to see if it's in range or out of range, but it might have to be adjusted. But we definitely have 1, 2, we'll probably adjust 1, 2, 3, 4. We will adjust possibly 6, at least 4, possibly 6. I might have to adjust this one because it really is kind of, it is below spec actually, so this one will have to be done 0.13 to 0.15, so that'll have to be adjusted. So what you do is, as you can see down here, let me see if I got a flashlight. Get a flashlight and I can see in here. So you can, there's a mark. You can see the mark on the inside there, a little straight line. That has to line up with the marks in this engine cover, which it does. And there's little lines, as you can see, there and there. They're actually coloured white so they can be seen clearly. They have to be aligned opposite each other, parallel to the top of the engine, which they are. So we need to loosen out this this kind of keeps the chain tensioner, so it keeps the tension on the chain. So I need to remove that chain tensioner, and once I remove the chain tensioner, I can lift off the chain. I then have to loosen all these bolts. So any bolt that is basically red, so there's 1, 2, 6, there's 10 on each camshaft. Okay, so the little shaft holder, they all have to be removed, and then I can take the camshafts out, and I can get at the little valve covers and the little shims. So I'm trying to get to the shims, and I have to do some change them out for some of them. So there's my camshaft. 2 camshafts are out. That's the chain tensioner, which I removed from here. That's inside the cylinder. So I need to remove these to get at the shim. So this is the little cap that sits on top of the valve. Let's see it here. So I've just taken it out of just there. So that's the top of the valve seat. Okay, and inside here is a little shim, and that little thing in the center is a little tiny shim, which I'll take in a second. That sits in on top, right in the middle of the valve, on top of it, and that has to be the right thickness. So I just pull this out with a magnet. Just take it off the magnet. Okay, and in here I just take out the little shim. Okay, and on the shim surface, let me see, does this have any writing? There usually is a value written there on top of the shim, which indicates its thickness. This one doesn't seem to have it. Let me see. It's on this side, but they put it in the wrong way, so it's kind of worn off. You can just about, so let me see, what was that value? It was 190 or 180, I can't really, I think it's 190. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this little caliper to stick it in here and measure the thickness just to be sure. And once I get the thickness of that little shim for sure, I'm just going to write it down here. So as you can see, I'm writing down the values for the shims I've already checked in red. So I have the thickness of them. So I'll just add a few more for the ones that are out of tolerance. So here we can see all the measurements that I've represented on just a piece of paper. So you can see my exhaust valves here, clearances, the intake valve clearances, just on this bottom row. So, and then we have our tolerances. So you can see the ones, this one here is the front leftmost valve, this one here, and I measured the clearance between the valve and the cam to be 0.13 millimeters. So the actual tolerance for an exhaust valve is 0.17, that's the lower bound. So it should be between 0.17 and 0.22 millimeters. So this one was well outside the tolerance. I think it was probably around 0.1 or 0.2 millimeters. So to get it, that tolerance, to change that, get the tolerance back within spec from 0.2 0.13 to above 0.17. Ideally you want to get it up to about the mid mark, which is about 0.2 millimeters is where I'd be kind of aiming for. So I presumed that the clearance was in around 0.1, 0.11 and 0.12. So what I did was the difference between this measured clearance and the spec, what I want it to be, which is 0.2, is about 0.08. So you can see here I represented it by 0.08 in red. Now I then took the shim out from on top of the valve. It's underneath the little bucket, and I measured it. So the measurement came out as 1.98. So to get that tolerance from, let's say, 0.12 up to 0.2, I need to reduce that valve clearance by 0.08 millimeters. So that means I take that away. I have a plus sign there because I did it incorrectly initially and scribbled it out, but essentially it should be I need to reduce that little shim from 1.98 down to 1.9, and that should bring my valve clearance back to within spec, so in and around 0.2 millimeters. So I brought that, I did that same, repeat that same measurements method for all the valves. Any of the ones that are in red, they're valves that I took out, measured, and I'm going to replace with new valve, or with new, took out the shims and measured them and went through that process, and I'm going to replace those shims wherever you see red. So I actually brought this piece of paper into the motorbike shop, told them I want the shims of this size, 1.9, 1.87, I forget now what this is, 1.85. Now what they did is they just got the shims and they stuck them on with a bit of sellotape, clear tape, so they're just stuck on. So I'll just take off that little bit of tape and I will take out the shim and I will stick it, I will replace the shims that are in the motorcycle with the ones that are here. Before I put them in, I will actually just double check them by measuring them with the this little caliper, some sort of, I don't know what you call these things, but vernier caliper of some description, and just to check that they are actually the size that I want them to be. They didn't have the exact size for some of them. This one, 190, you can see written on it, that is the exact size. The which one here? I have one little one here, just turn it around. This one here, I needed 1.77. They didn't have that, so they had 1.78. So I'm going to stick in a 1.78. It's slightly above, but I don't mind. So that's what they did. They just found out a shim that was approximately or exactly the size that I requested. And yeah, so the next job now is to take out the little metal buckets over the valves and replace the shims. So the camshafts are reinstalled. After inserting all the new shims, as you can see, the marks on the end of the camshafts are aligned with the horizontal, and the little mark in here, which you can see inside, is aligned with the marks on the engine cover. And I rotated it. I just stuck this ratchet on the end of the bolt in there, rotated it through about 360 degrees and then another 360 degrees, and checked that the markings here again remained in line with the markings here, which they do, and the chain tensioner was reinstalled. So I think everything is good. I'm happy enough with everything. I'm going to put some oil over moving parts in here, and then we should be good to reinstall the valve cover on the engine. So this little left and right side bracket, or some sort of engine mounting or frame mounting, the paint was all stripping off here. It was just all flaking off, so I've put some strip it. So it's just a paint stripper just to remove what's left of it, and I will then repaint it, put a bit of metal primer on it, and then repaint it black. It should look a lot better then. So that is the old Chinese radiator and fan, which obviously doesn't even fit properly. This is the new fan. You can see it fits perfectly to the, well, not it's the second-hand fan, but it's OEM, and we can see that it fits perfectly. Slight difference in size, not much though, and just a lot different quality to the Chinese. Just pretty bad welding here, just kind of thrown together. So you can see here now I have reinstalled the second-hand OEM radiator. So this is the original radiator for this model of bike. So it's all plumbed back into the cooling system. You can see I have removed one of the front forks. I have it up on a special stand that allows me to do that, to take off the front wheel. I've also removed some of the brake calipers because I'm going to have to service the brakes. And I've also reinstalled on the left, you can see there, the engine mounting bracket. It's been repainted black. And then just you can see here I have painted and reinstalled the front fairing bracket mount, and I've replaced the screen on the heads-up display so there's no more crack in it. So it's all looking a lot better. So now I just need to clean up the wiring loom, mainly on this side. So the next job is to replace the seals on my brake calipers. So as you can kind of see on this one, let me see it get in the light, just here, you can see my problem is that the seal just there, which is a dust seal, it is sticking out. So the dust seals are not seated properly, and they're actually a little bit damaged as a result. Very hard to get it so you can see it a little bit better there. You can just see the lip of the seal is sticking out. You should see piston the whole way around, but instead we can see the seal. So that is due to the fact that they're not seated properly, and they're not seated properly because of corrosion in the seats. So you can see there's a lot of corrosion in this one. I've started to scrape it out, so it should look a little bit cleaner. This one's not, on the left hand side is a little bit cleaner, but it's not perfect. So the seal on this one was probably fine, but the seal on this other one was sticking out and it was getting caught in the piston. So I've pumped out the pistons, so There's 2 pistons on each side of each caliper, so there's 4 pistons per caliper. As you can see, this is what the caliper looks like when it comes off. This is probably the left or right hand side, I don't know which. I think this is the left hand side caliper. So you can see that it looks like this, but it's actually held together with 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3. So they have to be loosened up. So that's it. When you loosen these 3 bolts, that's them here. The caliper comes apart, and you can then pump out the pistons. So it's a little bit difficult. It's not straightforward to pump out those pistons when they're split in half. But I got it done anyway. And now I just need to clean out the pistons, clean out the caliper, clean up those dust seal seats, and then I actually have seals, dust and brake fluid seals. So there is 8 pairs of dust, and so here's the dust seal. I think dust seal there sits in at the top, and then the fluid seal, you can see it's already seated. That little black line, you can see it's seated already. So they'll all be replaced, and then I can just put it back together and stick it back on the bike, and I should have functioning brakes. So to repair the lower fairing, I had to buy a new tool. So I bought this plastic welding gun. I got it from China. I think it was only something like €15. So it uses these little metal staples, which it heats up. So it connects in like that into the staple, and then you press the little trigger on the gun, heats up the staple, and then you're able to just insert that into the plastic fairing to fix any cracks. So you can see there I have put in some staples. Once it's kind of inserted, you just release the trigger and then pull it off, and the staple should stay behind. So you can see the crack in the fairing that I had to repair. So that would go through the fairing if I didn't repair it. And what I will then have to do is just to break off the ends of the staples, and I will fill that in with some sort of filler, so that the staples don't leave a sort of a sharp edge behind. And then the next thing I had to do was fix the holding joints, as you can see at the top of the fairing. So they are fixed there now. I used some little bit of sheet metal to do that. So here's the little sheet metal that I used. I cut that to shape, drilled a hole in it. You can see one of them there. It's the second one. And then I glued them on using sort of a metal repair or metal glue. So this is somewhat experimental. I'm not 100% sure that this will hold long term, but I'm going to try it. And this extra piece, that had to be glued on as well, and with a little bit of sheet metal at the end of that as well. You can see it there. And so it all kind of is fitted into shape. You can see the little metal glue that's there. I also used a little bit of metal glue on the other side, because you can see where my hand is. It was a little bit of a crack there, so I just glued that up. So that's repaired. So once it's on the bike, you won't actually see the glue, or you won't see any of the sheet metal, because it will all be hidden behind the side fairing. But this should work. They're all located in the right position. There you can see it a little bit better. There's the sheet metal connected with the plastic. And into the joints goes those little rubber grommets. So the wiring loom is nicely cleaned up now with the OEM radiator fitted. The wiring loom actually fits in the right place, so it should just go right over the top of the radiator as it is here. You can see that there's a little connector or a little plastic holder, and that slots into this little bracket. So this is the old bracket. Which way is it? This is the old bracket which I took off, and you can see this piece here was missing. And with the new bracket replacing it, you can see I now have a fairing holder section, so that's all good. So the only thing that needs to be fixed on this wiring loom is this needs to be rewired or wired up to a little connector. This is for the indicator. That's the only thing that has to be fixed up. The rest of it, you can see it looks like a little bit of a bunched up, but it's actually this is exactly the way it's meant to be, OEM. You can see with the I have the OEM bulbs in the headlight installed, and they go in the little connectors there, and you can see another one on the other side. So that's all OEM. This wiring is hanging down here, but that's gone. There's a little section in the fairing that fits in here, and it all sits in there, so that's all nice and clean. This is all the crap that came out of the wiring loom. This is all the Chinese LED LED lights. So these are the two lights that were in it, just pure crap. So I think these are little transformers. They increase the voltage, as you can see, 23,000 volts, which is pretty high. So I have read that they put a lot of pressure on the electrical system, so it's good to get that out. It's not OEM, so that's all gone. So once that's all out, the wiring loom just does look a lot cleaner, apart from this. I have also fixed up the little holder here, so just in here there's a little holder for the I don't know if you can just about see it, for the front headlight. That's fixed, so now it all looks nice and clean. This bracket here was painted black, so that's all, it all looks a lot better, and you can see the front dash is fixed, so it looks better as well. The other thing I did was this is a starter relay. This was a little bit of a mess. This little connector here is OEM, and I actually when I opened this up, there was no little, the red connector was missing. I don't know what they did with it. They broke it, so there was just little wires connected into the starter relay. Okay, and I didn't know, actually when I pulled them off, I didn't know which way they went back in. But this is where I salvaged part of the this is the wiring loom that I got in the UK for £25. I salvaged, this is the connector to the starter relay. So it has a red and yellow, red and black, or sorry, black and yellow, and a white wire. And it actually had that little red connector, so I was able to salvage it from this, and the same wiring colours are on my bike, so that all slots back on, just like so. So now wires are all nicely connected the way they're meant to be. Everything else inside looks nice and clean. So now I just need to put the fuel tank back on, fill it with coolant, and connect up this to the fuel pump, and I should be able to try to turn it over. I just need to connect the negative terminal of the battery and she should be good to go for the test turnover. Just a quick attachment. That sounds better. Perfect.